What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Coug Cast, episode 3. We are your hosts, the Entrepreneurship Club, and I am your host, Alec. And today I have here with me, fellow host.
Yes, this is Jake, and today we don't have anybody else here. Unfortunately, no Marvin, no Emiliano, and no one else in the club. So it'll just be us going for this quick little podcast.
Mhm.
Yeah, so getting right into the Coug Cast, episode 3. Let's just go over some WSU news really quickly. So our first interesting news story is the WSU continues to improve fiscal health. So that basically means fiscal health is like their financials. So in just like 3 years, they were able to turn, or WSU was able to turn a $30 million annual operating deficit into $30 million surplus. And this was interesting because I actually looked at, I believe, 2019 financial statements for WSU a while back, like a year ago, and I was shocked that they were losing money, like big time. And it seems like they've gotten those costs, I guess, under control, which is interesting. But I mean, it makes a lot of sense since there was a lot of budget cuts, right, through COVID, and additionally, like, I guess it's not in person, right? So they don't have to pay for a lot of stuff. So, I mean, they lost a lot of revenue, but I think they probably saved up because of all the costs that they didn't have to spend. So, what do you think, Alec?
They certainly didn't cut the tuition. They definitely increased the tuition by a couple percentage, which I was not pleased with COVID and everything. I was definitely not happy with them increasing the tuition costs with, I mean, most of it goes towards stuff are in person, like the rec center is free and stuff like that. But this whole year, like, it was cut off for most of the time, and so we didn't get access to most of that stuff. I feel like they should have cut the tuition costs like a little bit, but they didn't in terms of going to students. So I'm surprised that they improve their budget.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, honestly, I want to look at the financial statements myself because I don't. I can't see where they've released it. I don't think they've released it yet. So they
Yeah.
haven't released 2020 financial statements, but I would love to take a look because I know they have a lot in reserves. Like they have a lot of cash. Like they're sitting
Oh
on
yeah.
a lot of cash. Like it's ridiculous. Like hundreds of millions of dollars of
Oh
cash.
yeah.
They're
They
sitting on.
freaking make like a buttload each year. Like
Well, they make a lot,
I
but in recent years they've lost money every year, so that's not good, I guess, for them. But
yeah.
they're okay. I mean, they could continue to lose money for like however many years, and they would still be okay because they have so much cash. Like it's just
Yeah.
absurd. Although it does say in this article on the WCU News website, the Insider website, it says that their reserves had decreased by 115 million, so they were taking
Damn.
losses and they were eating into those reserves.
Yeah. That's a yikes.
Yeah, but it's shocking to see that they have so much money that they're just sitting on. It's like, but every year they have to raise tuition by just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know what's happening there, but it's crazy. Uh,
Hmm.
so yeah, that's just that little news story. But for the next news story, I just want to talk about more of the mandatory vaccines. So we've kind of talked about a little bit prior that colleges, and universities around the U.S. Some of them were starting to require vaccines. And I know some of the first, I think the first college to come out and say it was Rutgers University, I believe. Then Cornell University quickly followed, I believe. And at this point, we have a long list of colleges and universities which are requiring mandatory like vaccines for their students in the fall. And a lot of them are private universities like Brown University, Cornell, a lot of other private schools because they have complete power over their students. But it's surprising in California, both of the California state school systems, the University of California and the California State University systems, will be requiring students returning to campus to be vaccinated. So I guess pretty much California is all in. They're just mandatory vaccines for everybody. New York is similar. Many schools in New York are following suit. which is, I mean, if you think about it, those are like some of the most liberal states. So it makes sense that those states would be the first to require like a lot of their universities to require mandatory vaccines. I don't know. It's an interesting topic. We'll see how it continues to develop because this stuff's, gonna have to, like every school is gonna have to put out their stance on whether they're requiring their students to get a vaccine or not. And some schools have said that they're not going to do it. Schools in, I think Florida, some schools in Florida have said that they're not going to require. Even some other schools around the nation. But Alec, I know you already have the vaccine, but if you didn't and you were being forced to, would you be happy?
Well, actually, you caught me on that. I actually don't have my vaccine yet. I need to go get it as soon as possible. Yeah.
Oh, that must have been Marvin though.
Yeah, it must have been Marvin or something.
Okay, that was Marvin. But
yeah,
good old Marvin, we miss him, but he'll be back shortly. But so, what do you think, Alec? If WCU came out and said that they're going to require vaccines for every student returning to campus? I mean, is that something you would like to do, like because they tell you to, or would you rather have a choice?
I mean, I mean, really, if you give anybody a choice or the decision to, have a choice, I think they go with that route. But overall, I don't think it's that bad. I literally, I just want to get back in person like as soon as possible. So I'll literally do whatever it takes to get back in person and get that college experience that I've like missed out on and kind of make up for it. So if they came out and said, yeah, you have to have a vaccine, I would go straight to, wherever I could to get a vaccine right away and do that. Just for the sake of just getting back in person. Like,
Yeah.
if it gives me like some random like disease or like blood clots or whatever, then so be it. Like, I just want to get back in person.
Honestly, yeah, I would agree. I would probably agree with that. Like, here's the thing. I think if they didn't make it mandatory, I still think, like, what did they say for herd immunity? What is it, like 70% of the population?
Yeah.
75%? It's something like that, right?
Mhm.
I personally believe that if you kept it as a choice, that 70% or more of the student population would probably get it regardless.
Yeah.
So I really don't see the need to force it and infringe on some of your rights. But I guess to be fair, there are some vaccinations that you do that are required for college anyways. Like what are
Yeah.
they? The influenza? I don't even know.
Measles. I think measles is
Yeah,
one.
the measles, I guess. So there's a lot of there's already a vaccination requirement that you have to go through as a freshman
Mhm.
for measles, I believe, right?
Yeah, measles,
So
and I think there's one other one because I remember getting shots. Now that you mention it, like I remember getting shots like coming freshman year, like to be able to enter in college. So I don't think it would be any different with another vaccine shot.
yeah,
Like,
but I think here's the difference. I think here's the difference where people are concerned. The
Mhm.
difference is that the measles vaccine or whatever other vaccine that they require is approved by the FDA. And it's
Yeah.
approved because it has a lot of research because they were able to mass test it for longer periods of time on larger populations. But that hasn't happened with the coronavirus vaccines with the COVID vaccines, right? So what
Mhm.
people are concerned about is the fact that this is still a test, right? There's still basically it's an ongoing trial, right? A mass ongoing trial with hundreds of millions of people vaccinated. But the point is that the FDA technically has not approved it. So it's
Mhm.
kind of like they're using the emergency action to force it into you without actually making sure that it's like safe and
Mhm.
proper. And I think that's where people are having the issue, not
Yeah.
necessarily the fact that it's going to be a requirement, because there already are vaccination requirements and we have to abide by those
Mhm.
like those rules. So it's interesting. But also, I just want to mention before we move on, some of these are actually, well, every school that requires a vaccination currently, you can get an exemption if you have a religious reason or a medical reason to get an exemption from the vaccine. You can submit an exemption or you can submit something to be exempt from having to be required or from having the vaccine. So there is some, they are giving some freedom, I guess, to the religion or medical needs. I'm curious of like what medical need would make it so you don't need a vaccine. You might not
Maybe
sure what that is.
stuff that makes you like not what's the word I'm thinking of? That makes you like more vulnerable to sickness. Like I know like cancer.
Like you mean like
Like that.
immunodeficiency?
Yeah,
Here's the
yeah.
thing though. I thought if you have an immunodeficiency, you're supposed to get vaccines. I thought it was the opposite.
Yeah, I mean you are, but not knowing that sometimes you can get pretty sick after taking like vaccinations or the flu shot or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I thought about that too. I thought,
Mhm.
well, who would want to be exempt on a medical basis? Because I don't know, maybe there's some reason you'd want to be. But the first thing that my mind went to was exactly what you thought. It was
Yeah.
someone who has an immunodeficiency problem who would be scared of getting sick from the vaccine and dying from it. And I thought the
Yeah.
same thing. But then it's like, well, no, because that's what you want. If you're a person with immunodeficiency, you want to get a vaccine. If you're
Yeah.
for example, older population, like if you're an older lady or older man, you are better off getting the vaccine than
Hmm.
not getting the vaccine.
Definitely.
Right? Young people, like people, us, we're like 20, 21 years old. We don't need, like, we're the population that needs it the least in
Yeah.
terms of
Definitely.
being like hurt by it. But
Hmm.
people with immunodeficiency, I believe, and older people who have low, weakening immune systems, they benefit from vaccines. Like those are the people who need them. So
Yeah. I
I
definitely
don't
agree
know
with
what
that.
exemption like that would be, but I'm sure there's an honest explanation.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just that little topic. I think it's interesting, but let's connect it. Let's stay connected to the COVID's topic. We have vaccine passports. So a big topic being thrown around in different nations, already being done in places like China, for example. They are requiring a COVID passport, or I'm sorry, a vaccine passport, which would in this case is going to be for the COVID vaccines. So that's just really interesting to think that some states are going to be enforcing a vaccine passport, which means you wouldn't be able to go there unless you had the vaccine passport. But other states like Texas and Florida, they've already like preemptively they banned the COVID vaccine passport. So because they believe that it's not very fair to everybody, and it's definitely a weird restriction to put on people who want to travel, especially just like in the United States alone. So Alec, what do you think about the vaccine passport? Is that something that concerns you? Are you on board?
I wouldn't really say like as like a concern. I mean, it is a 21st century, and if you don't have a smartphone by now, then I mean,
I
there's
mean,
something up. But there's definitely people that are impacted by poverty and they simply just can't afford it. So yeah, it would definitely impact those um, who can't afford it. But at the same time, if they can't afford a smartphone or whatever, then would they be able to afford to travel? Because I know traveling is quite expensive. You know, hotel, food expenses, and such like that. But overall, I mean, I don't really mind it. I don't really care for it. I mean, it's just another thing to to track stuff, and I don't really care for it. I mean, Texas and Florida. I mean, there's a bunch of people in Texas and Florida that are partying or doing whatever, and you don't really see a lot of like COVID reports on that. And well, at least from what I've heard, is that they haven't really had trouble with COVID, even though they've been like fully open and everything. So having a vaccine passport to track if you have it or not, I mean, sure. I don't really know. I don't really care. Like,
Well,
I mean,
here I should clarify the COVID, because I didn't mention it. The vaccine passport. The idea is that it's actually an app that you download on your phone. So you need a smartphone, right? Anybody who decides not to live their life on a smartphone or a phone at all, they're kind of cut out of the equation in a way. Maybe there's a roundabout way of doing it, but
yeah,
for now, the way that they've announced it is it's an app on your phone that you download, and then I guess you set up an app, like you set up a profile. I don't know how it works, but you basically it comes with like a QR code or something, and that proves like that if you have the vaccine, it can show on that, and then you show you give it if you're going through like TSA, right? airport security, I guess, you would show them this. It would be like another step, which sucks because TSA is already like, the worst. TSA,
They're uptight about everything.
they're just trying to find another way to slow us down through TSA.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with
Love
that. Like, it would definitely be an annoyance for sure.
Bro, can you imagine, like, you have how many people are like, when the airport's pretty packed, right? And eventually it'll get back to the point where it's pretty packed, I would hope. And that would be like an extra 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds per person. That's like, that adds up. That's like 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 20 minutes there of extra waiting time because
True.
they got to go through this vaccine passport. So
That would be annoying.
that is
I think
another
about it.
annoying thing. But the biggest concern is that people who don't have smartphones, people who can't afford a smartphone, people who don't want to live their, want to live their lives on a phone like that. They don't, you're required to take it with you. You're required. It's like basically, it's also, you has to verify your identity. And I don't know, like, what if you don't have an ID? How are you going to verify your identity? So it's just, it's just a lot of nuances that don't make sense. And it's also quite a concerning infringement on your rights as a human, or not as a human being, but as a U.S. citizen. It's just kind of like a weird. It's limiting your travel. Like the federal government or the state is limiting your ability to travel based on something that's never been done before, and that seems a little crossing the line. Like, it seems like, okay, like, let me go to where I want to go. You don't have to track where I'm going, because that's another thing it would do. It would preemptively know when you went through security, when you traveled, so it could just they could just track your location wherever you go. So it's kind of on par with like bigger data, big tech, all that type of stuff. And there's a lot of concerns there. So I think we have to move cautiously if we are going to require vaccine passports.
That is a good point. That is a very good point.
So let's just move on. So let's get away from the COVID stuff and let's just move on to our world type of news. So let's just talk about the tax day. So typically tax day is April 15th. And for this year, 2021, they've moved it to May 15th, I believe. So you have an extra month to do your taxes. I personally have to do that. I haven't done my taxes yet. I worked for like a week in the first week of 2020 or 2020. Yeah, 2020. Wait, yeah, I have to do my taxes for like a week. But and for my stocks, I guess. Dude, that's a whole nother issue. But
actually, when I filed my taxes, like, I went through and because if you own stocks, you have to do taxes, but I didn't sell any stocks, so when going through TurboTax or whatever.
Yeah, that was super easy, I'm sure.
Yeah, like, there's like, did you sell any? Did you report any gains or whatever? And maybe I did sell a couple here and there, and made like a couple bucks, but like, it's just a couple.
Yeah, here's the thing. I used Robinhood in 2019. Okay. I bought a single share of Tesla and I sold it like for like a $50 gain.
Yeah.
And I did my taxes, for that 2019 year, and I completely forgot because I switched everything from Robinhood to TD Ameritrade. So I switched all my money. Like, I stopped trading with Robinhood and I moved it to TD Ameritrade. And so what I forgot that I had a 1099 on Robinhood, and I realized just the other day that I had 2019 stock capital gains of $50 in my Robinhood, and I never reported it. So I'm gonna try to figure out how I can fix that if I have to fix that. But it's definitely a weird thing because no one talks about it. No one talks about. There's so many videos on YouTube of like how what stocks to buy and how to trade stocks, but no one puts up a single video on what you should do exactly for taxes.
And I think the IRS knows that too. Like, we're not making like big money at all, and we're students. No. So they're not too worried about.
No, I don't think they are. Like, I did the calculation. No, here's the thing. I got really scared and I started looking into it. How much money do I owe? No, because you know what they do, right? If you don't pay, if you have money that you have not paid to the IRS, they do interest. So you actually owe.
Really?
Yeah, it accrues interest. So basically, I owe $50, or no, I don't owe $50. I own capital gains of $50, which in my tax bracket is 10%. So I owe like, $8 or $12 or something. And that is going to accumulate, it's going to accrue interest. And they do it at like, I think it's 0.05% interest. So I calculated, and they might hit you with a penalty too. They can hit you with like 20% or 30% penalties for not paying. But I did the calculation, and I could not pay my taxes on that for 50 years, and I would owe the government like $400.
Yeah,
So
that's not bad at all.
dude, I'll pay that in like 50 years. It's okay.
Yeah.
We're okay.
Yeah,
So
we're not making.
I just want to remind everyone to try to, taxes are May 15th this year, special date for May 5th for 2021.
Mhm.
So get your taxes in if you haven't. Then right on top of that, we'll talk about the proposed capital gains tax by Biden. Alec, are you happy?
No, I'm not happy at all.
Here's the thing. I bet it doesn't even affect us. We don't even make that.
I mean, my friend was saying, if you make like, $44,000 or less a year, then it doesn't apply to you. But if you make $44,000 or above to like a certain amount, like $300,000, it affects you like 15 or 28%. I think that's what they raised it to. So I mean that'd be a bummer if you own like property, real estate, anything like that, and if you like are making like $100,000, $200,000 a year, then yeah, that would suck with that. And I definitely don't like anything that involves the word tax and increase. Like, get it out of here. Like, I don't want taxes. Like, I love everything that has to lower taxes.
And
But
here's the thing.
I hate giving money to the government. So
yeah, here's the thing. They're doing two things here. Well, you should know that capital gains, right? That's like okay, let's just talk about stocks, right? Because you're right. You can have capital gains on cryptocurrency. You can have capital gains on real estate, right? Like you just mentioned. Yeah. Let's just solely talk about stocks. Yeah. There is something called double taxation. Okay. And companies are taxed once on their earnings. Like when they make a profit, right? They have income. Yeah. They're taxed on any of that. Then when they give out dividends, those dividends are taxed, right? And sometimes, most of the time, the dividends are taxed. And then what also happens is if you're a person who owns stock and you sell stock for a gain, right? That's what they call a capital gain. Yep. You have to pay a tax as well. So there's double taxation. So I mean, I don't know how much they're going to tax. There's some situations in which state governments, I think like California, New York, like New York's raising their tax for all the people who make like millions of dollars. But like they ran the numbers, and there's like some states now, like I think New York or something, where if you live there and make a certain amount of money through like double taxation and everything, the government's taking like 70% of what you make.
Yeah, it's insane.
I don't know. That just seems a little like too high.
Yeah, like dude, that's crazy. Like if you're taking that much, then
at that point, are you working for yourself?
No, you're working for people who don't make as much as
you.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy. I don't know. I just feel like honestly, it's not the capital gains is not going to affect us. It's not going to affect, majority of people.
Well, actually no, it will affect us because we do own stocks, and as soon as like Biden announced that tax plan, like all of my stocks went down.
Oh yeah, there was a drop in the market.
There was definitely a big drop in the market, and as you said, like companies have to pay like more capital gains, so that's gonna essentially kind of lower how much.
Well, that would be the corporate income tax, which they're looking to raise. They're looking to raise the corporate income tax to, I think that was supposed to go to 28%. Yeah. So right now with Trump, it was like 21% or 22%, and they're gonna raise it to back to 28%, where it used to be like before Trump. So I think that's what's gonna happen there. But basically, here's the other thing we have to reconsider. Like, there's also something called inflation, and inflation is also no one talks about it, but inflation is also a tax, right? It's a tax on the value of what you have. So if you
it's probably the worst kind of tax. Like, or the worst.
Isn't it deceptive?
Very, very deceptive.
It's like how could they do that? It's like taking your money, but without. It's like stealing. is what it is.
Basically.
Taxes, like when you pay your taxes, there's like, you understand what's going on. Like most Americans understand what taxes are and why they pay them. But guess what most Americans don't understand?
Inflation.
Yeah, they don't understand that inflation is a tax, which means the government, by printing a whole bunch of money and doing all their funky stuff, they're also taxing you. They're just not telling you. They're gonna let it show in like 5 to 10 years.
You may be getting your stimmy check for $1,400 or whatever, but that, you know, the value of money is definitely going down. All your assets value are going down.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's your purchasing power. And when your purchasing power decreases, basically what you have is worth less. It's like you can't get as much for what you used to be able to get. So that's just like a big concern as well, along with the, you know, things like capital gains tax. But more importantly, I think, is inflation, which is why, you know, we should all be concerned.
It's like whenever a state raises their minimum wage, it inflates the goods and everything else with it. So you may be getting paid more, but all the goods and services that you are, you know, making money towards are going to be more expensive. So
yeah, and it's like you could ask the consumers, hey, would you be willing to pay, you know, X amount more for this item if that means that our employees were paid, you know, $15 or for an hour for minimum wage? Most people love the idea when it's a minimum wage, right? But once they realize that they would have to pay 20% more or 15% more on their groceries, like their grocery store haul, like once they realize that they have to pay 20% or 15% more just to buy all the same amount of grocery items, then people are not for it all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So you know what it makes me think, like, people are all for environmentalism until you take away their standard of living.
True.
Like, think about it. If you were like, yo, the earth is going to crap, we need to reduce how much electricity we're using. Can we shut everyone's power off at 7? Dude, no one is going to be for that.
No.
If they said you can't drive your car past 10 p.m., people are going to be like, what? Okay, like you're everyone's an environmentalist until it actually affects their life.
It infringes upon them. That's funny.
I just thought of that. I just thought it's kind of a weird way of thinking about it, but it's so true. It's so true. No one likes to admit it, but it's so true.
It is very, very true.
Yeah. So that wraps up our world news, our U.S. news for this podcast. But we have one more thing we want to talk about. Alec, take it away.
Alrighty. So since, you know, it's dead week and we're approaching finals here. Good luck to all your finals, by the way. Definitely gonna need it, even though most of it, you know, is open note, whatever. But on the note of that, I kind of wanted to go over, you know, some, what's the word? Some summaries on like how much we've learned this year, because I know, it's been a whole year of online school, so it's been very, very different versus in person. And I know people, or at least from what I've heard, is that people have learned differently from in person to online. And I just want to kind of go over, you know, what we've learned this year on online classes, and talk about some specific courses this year that I took, and Jake, of course, as well, with his courses as well, and kind of go over what did we learn this year. And for me, I'd say I did learn a little bit, but it was definitely not as much as in person, because of the online environment that we've been in, and just the mentality that I've kind of had with it as well. You know, being open note or whatever, and being able to look up stuff with you know, the assignments or whatever, definitely didn't make me retain as much, and I didn't learn as much as I did in freshman year in person, or at least I don't remember a lot of the stuff from the courses this year, and that just comes with the online environment.
I definitely agree. I feel like for me, like the online, it's almost like you go on autopilot, and
True.
It's hard to remember things. I feel like that's what's happening. You're like stuck on autopilot. You know, classes are some classes get easier, some classes get harder. We can talk about that in a little bit, but it's more about just the fact that it feels like you're kind of on autopilot. Everything, since it is open note most of the time, you don't have there's no incentive to remember anything, right?
Yeah.
We have to remember, like humans, we work off of incentives. So when you take away the incentive to want to remember things, no, you're not going to remember anything. And so it's a weird thing, because maybe it doesn't matter, right? Because half the stuff we learn in school we forget anyways.
Yeah, that is true.
We go to the workforce and we learn everything all over again, or we learn what matters, or we learn things they didn't teach. So maybe none of this actually matters, right? But in the short term, it feels like we learned a lot less. And for me, let's talk about the courses that we did learn from, because I feel like we're talking bad about the online environment, and it's not all that bad. Because, for example, Alec, you remember this? We both took a BA 204, the spreadsheet class.
Oh God,
I learned Excel. I'm not even gonna lie.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah, I did too.
That is one skill that's gonna be with me forever.
Yeah. And going into it, like I was like, oh, Excel class, this is gonna be easy. But then going through it, I was like, what the heck? There's so much to Excel that I didn't realize.
It is.
And I definitely learned a lot from it.
And I'm gonna be honest, out of any of the classes that you could take online, that one's not the worst.
Yeah.
That one's pretty good to take online. I mean, it's all online anyways. It's like, what would I do going in person? We would just be looking at we would be looking at the presentation of somebody on their computer anyways.
And we'd be on our laptops or whatever, or be in a computer lab or whatever.
Yeah. Let's see. Is there any other topics, like specific topics, that you really feel like you learned this year online?
One class that I actually really, really enjoyed quite a bit online was marketing. I mean, I'm kind of biased by saying that as I'm a marketing major, but I have to say, like, my professor was definitely kept it together, and just the way he presented, the presentations and stuff, because I know a lot of classes and teachers, like, holy crap, like it's so monotone and it gets so boring so fast.
Yeah.
And that is one thing that, classes have each to their own, is the professor and how they teach. You could have a bad professor, a good professor, but I'd have to say marketing, definitely my professor was so chill. Like, he did all of the classes pre-recorded on lectures, so we can watch them anytime, and we can go back and watch them too. And just the way he presented them, it was all on PowerPoints, but he had like really good stories he would tell, and he would like relate things to like his experiences, and I thought it was just cool how he presented it. And I definitely remember the topics of marketing that he was going through. But yeah, that's one class that I definitely learned quite a bit. And yeah.
Did you ever meet him live?
No, I actually, when we go back to person in fall, I want to go and meet him, because he's super cool. He's probably one of my favorite professors I've ever had.
That's crazy, because there's some teachers that I really wish I got to actually meet in person, and that I didn't. And that definitely, like, that's kind of crazy that you don't get to, like, this year we didn't really get to meet anyone. Like, we sometimes did. Some of the teachers, you would have cameras on, but a lot of the classes, kind of went away from that after the first week. And like you just said, you could have a class that was pretty much completely asynchronous, and you never even, I did that. I had 2 classes in the summer. They were normal online classes, and they were pretty much asynchronous. Or one of them, I never even had a lecture. Like, it blew my mind. But I never met, like, or I met one of them before, but I took a class and never had a live lecture, and sometimes never met the professors or the TAs.
Yeah, it's kind of sad.
It's crazy, but it's also kind of sad, because sometimes you get a good teacher or a really cool professor, and you wish you could make that network.
Yeah.
Like, you wish you could have shook their hand or gone to their office hours or something. Like, I did that when I was like last year before the pandemic, and you make great connections with teachers if you just make an effort to go to their office hours once or twice.
I mean, they say it and stuff, and you know, they're like, here's my office hours, but like professors actually like enjoy having students in office hours unless you just completely don't understand what the heck is going on in anything, and the professor basically has to teach it like all over from scratch. But I mean, to help you out and meet and have connections and stuff, it's definitely worth it. It's awesome.
Yeah, so sometimes the teachers can be busy during office hours, and that I've ran into that issue where like they're so busy that they almost don't want to see you there. But most of the time that doesn't happen. Most of the time you go to office hours and they're like really happy that you came, and in fact like it's gotten me it's saved me in a few classes. That's all I'm gonna say.
True.
It's like legit saved me. Like if how some students will try to pull off a Hail Mary email at the end of the semester.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually pull it off if you've actually made a relation, like a network with them, and went to office hours. Like throughout,
that is very true.
You can. It's like you can pull it off. It's like not even a problem. But like you're gonna have a hard time doing that if you've never made an effort.
Mm-hmm.
And that's crazy. But
I agree with that.
So let's talk about, I guess, like which. So this is an interesting idea of like some courses during online have been harder than others, and vice versa. Some courses during online have been easier than when it was in person. And I just want to ask you, like, which courses did you take over the past year or so that you felt like would have been harder in person versus online, or vice versa?
Okay, so I would say the hardest ones they're going to be in person. Going back to the fall, they're going to be harder in person than rather online than they were this year. I would have to say B-Law would be one of them. And stats, MG top 215 is definitely going to be so hard. In person, I honestly wouldn't imagine taking the test in person without having your notes or whatever, and be able to use your resources, because I mean I used everything for those tests and I still struggled. Like that class is super tough. So going back in person, I feel bad for people that are taking it.
Some of these courses, I don't even understand how they operate in person. Mm-hmm. Like how? Like it blows your mind sometimes. But like that's for some of them. Have you taken any UCore classes this past year?
I finished all my UCore ones. Or actually, I think I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I finished up my UCore freshman year.
Okay, I'm curious. During the first, when the pandemic first hit in last March, for when we were in between the semester, were there any classes that were a noticeable difference then?
Wait, say that again.
So like when the pandemic hit in March last year, like when it first hit and we went from in person to online, were there any classes that you were taking at that moment that were like way easier or considerably harder when you went to the online?
Okay.
I have one. I can say it.
Yeah, go for it. Name yours. Give me a second.
Yeah, I'll give you a second, because basically I was taking a few courses, obviously, but I was taking the class COM 102, the public.
Yes, I took that class.
I was taking that course during when it happened. So I took half of that course in person, where I had to get up and I had to give a speech in front of the class of like 20 to 30 students, and that class was a wreck in person. It was low-key so nerve-wracking. Like it was hard. I prepared so hard for those speeches and I was like shaking nervous for some weird reason, right? I don't know why, but that was because it was in person. But guess what? When it went online, oh my gosh, it was like 100 times easier. I was able to record my speeches over and over and over again until I got one I liked. It was complete night and day. The COM 102 class online was so much easier than the COM 102 class in person.
I think that's how this has to do with public speaking.
Yeah.
Like presenting in the Zoom environment is so much easier than in person. I'd have to
No,
say.
in fact, 100%. Because you can like put notes up and like you can totally find ways to get around it. But another class. Remember, we were both taking econs. Remember,
Oh yeah.
we
Yep.
we were in that class together, and that class, I was
Whew.
grinding in that class. Like for the in-person part, I
Yeah.
was grinding, man. I went to office hours like weekly. I was going to office hours weekly, man, and I was really like working hard, and it was barely keeping me afloat. Like I was barely keeping afloat. Then when that class went online, I like gave up. Like I didn't know what to do. I stopped going to office hours because of the online environment. I just didn't
Mhm.
know. Like it was just kind of like that point where I had to acclimate to like the environment, but it was just not working. Like I just wasn't there. And so I completely like that econs class got so much harder. I think it was econs 101. It was so much harder online than it was in person, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I couldn't. I don't know. It was a tough one.
Yeah, definitely because you like take notes more and you pay more, or at least I do. I pay more attention than person. Like online environment and like learning online is definitely my attention span is not for it.
Do you remember our teacher,
Yeah, yeah,
Gregmar, I think, that was his first name. He would always call on us.
yeah. I remember that.
He
Yeah,
would always call on us, but that whole interactive element like died
yeah.
when it went online. That was dead. Like it was not happening.
Hmm.
So that I feel like that class I took us I felt much more confident if that class would have continued in person. I would have done so much better in that class. Like
Yeah,
I just really I struggled for the rest of the semester because of the
definitely, definitely.
yeah.
And going off that, I finally thought of a class that would be. I think it would be easier in in person, just for the sake of being in person learning better for me personally. I would say the accounting classes would be easier. I mean, this could be an unpopular opinion, but I think the accounting classes in person would be better just for the sake of like going to office hours and having that interaction and paying more attention to the stuff in accounting, because online I had to go through the homework and stuff, and they do like concept video things, and they just watch the video, and that's like how I would learn, um off going off of the like lectures and stuff. I mean, going through the video and stuff would be it was hard. It was definitely harder, but I feel like having an in-person element of like the teacher or the professor up there presenting and going through the thing and like answering questions more and just having that more interactive element of in person, I think it would be easier, I would say.
Yeah, I think so because do you remember BA 100?
Yeah.
The very first business intro class, we had to do the financial stuff all on paper.
Hmm.
I just feel like learning that on paper was actually so helpful. Like I don't know why, but I just
Yeah.
feel like it made so much more sense to learn that on like with pen and paper, the way that they made us do it.
Hmm.
And to be fair, like I feel like the class would have been a lot harder. These accounting classes would have been a lot harder because of the exams. I think the exams would have been a lot harder in person,
Oh, oh,
but the
definitely would.
learning of it would have been a lot easier. So maybe that counteracts.
Yeah, it would counteract itself there. I think. I mean,
But you hear
yeah.
what I'm saying? Like the exams would definitely feel hard.
Oh, 100%, 100%. Exams in like online, overall for every class, that I've had this past year, any exam you took, I would say, except for stats. Stats is just a pain in the.
No, that one is the one where we get to reap all the benefits.
Yes, yes. Like that class would be.
Just because
Ooh.
weird setup. I don't know. I haven't really had a class like that.
Mhm.
So straight like I don't even know. I don't want to call it out right now because it just seems a little like
Mhm.
could be controversial, but it just seems like a weird setup of a class. Like we really only do two things. We do exams and we do online homework.
Yeah, and a lot of it in that class comes from the homework and comes from. I mean, the chapter book. I mean, on everything pretty much in all my classes, the chapter books were all ebooks, and so you had to go on the ebooks and like read them, and I never really read them.
Yeah,
But,
that's been the only part about the switch between in person and online that almost was seamless.
Yeah, I
Because
agree
it's
with
like
that.
we were doing that anyways.
Yeah, it was the
Like
homework and
I
everything.
bought only like 2 books in person. I
Yeah.
bought the paper version of Econs because I just wanted it. But I also had the ebook. But then I also for like our English class that we had to take for I think it was like English like 101. I had to rent. No, I rented the physical little book that we had to get. But like I think that was it. I think I barely got any physical book besides those.
The books and the homework were basically seamless because yeah, as you said, we did them
Yeah,
mostly
exactly.
online anyways. So that was one part of the online aspect that didn't really change. But lecture wise, I feel like are way, way, way better in person. But the exams definitely easier online.
Yeah. Look, hey, okay, can we just call some people out right now on the pod? On the pod.
Sure, sure.
Let's just call some people out. All right. Look, Alec, if you're in 2020, what is it, April? If you're in April of 2021 and you still have your microphone not muted in class, like what are we doing? I'm so
yes.
no, like, I'm so serious. You know how there's an option where you can select it to mute yourself when you join Zoom calls?
Uh-huh.
I don't know why people haven't figured that out. It's been well over a year. I have people in classes that have their mic on for like the entire lecture, and you just hear like a TV on in the background.
Yeah, it's so annoying going into a Zoom class.
Understand.
And how you're the professor like, can you mute your mic, please? And they don't hear him. They're just like blabbering on or whatever.
Like think about it. If the person is not paying attention enough where their microphone is not muted, the teacher asking to mute the microphone is not gonna do anything. They're obviously not paying attention.
Obviously. That's funny.
It's like I don't know why. How did people not learn to just turn that one setting on? It would have solved their problems for life. Like, are there any moments where somebody said something like super personal, or like you heard a phone call, or like weird things on the Zoom calls? Did you hear any of those moments?
Yeah, there was this one class where it was so awkward because the person came in, he had the microphone on, and he's like, yeah, I'm in this class right now, and this professor sucks or something like that. And it's like, oh, no, I swear, it was something. It was so. I don't remember the exact words, but it was something along those lines, like this class sucks, or something along those lines that the person said, and everyone was just like, oh, like it was so awkward.
What was the teacher's reaction?
They didn't really say anything. They were just like, all right. They just took it up for face value. Like, I was like,
okay,
damn.
Okay. So here, on the contrary, you know how I was just trashing people, like students who can't mute their microphones?
Mm-hmm.
How about the teachers who haven't learned that there's a mute button where they can purposely mute people?
Yeah, that's another one.
Teachers didn't realize, like most teachers, some did, but most of them are so clueless that they don't know that they can mute people. Like, just mute them. If the person's not paying attention, you also have the power to mute them.
Yeah.
But they don't realize. They just sit there and they call their name like 30 times.
Yeah, it's
just, oh my goodness. It's funny.
And the people in the chat are like, Professor, you can mute them, right? It's like they have to give them advice on how to use Zoom.
Hey, there's some pretty bad moments, but you can't, like, a lot of these professors are quite old, so I don't want to, make them feel like they're bad people, because they're not. They're just it's just the technology. That's all it is.
I mean, they have a lot of knowledge about like what they're teaching or whatever, but sometimes technology is not one of their knowledge sets.
And that's why I feel bad for some of these teachers during Zoom. This Zoom online university, like, it's definitely not their place to thrive. Most of them. Some do, but most of them, it's not their place. Like, they're better in person, and it should stay that way.
Yeah, definitely going into this next semester, hoping for in person and all that. Like oh gosh, yeah, it's definitely gonna be better. Next semester is gonna be better.
To some degree. We'll hope they don't cancel last minute.
No, you do. Yeah, I'm hoping. I
I'm
swear, if
dropping
they,
out.
bro, I
I'm dropping
swear,
out. If they pull a switcheroo like they did last
bro.
year.
Oh my god, I swear, if they like, because they already gave me an email and stuff that we're going back in person. So if they go like
Yeah, but
last second,
they also sent out an email before. They sent out a whole press release, a whole advertisement campaign.
yeah, I did.
I just think it's funny, man. They definitely got so many freshmen to commit,
Yeah,
and
that's
then pull the
ruthless.
switcheroo. It's ruthless.
It's ruthless. It's like,
But
jeez.
but if they do it again, I'm dropping out. Like I will become a pizza
I would.
delivery boy so fast.
Honestly, at that point, I would just transfer. Like I would apply to a bunch of schools and just transfer.
I
Even
would
though
go to
my grades are
DeVry.
good, but like,
Yeah, I would go to DeVry.
yeah, somewhere in Florida or somewhere in Texas or wherever is open, just take me. I don't
Bro,
care which one.
Arizona.
Arizona.
You know ASU's been open all year.
Really?
Yeah, ASU open. Like I'm
Wow.
pretty sure the entire year, like open, like in-person classes open.
Jeez.
I
That's
don't know if
crazy.
that's true. Actually, I think it is, but I should probably fact check that.
Yeah, I can't do another year. Like I know I said like a lot of people say that they can't do another semester, but we did it anyways. Like if they do another semester, like I seriously gonna consider transferring and not continue to go to WSU anymore because that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is so unfortunate. I just hope we get some portion of our college career in person again.
And the experience, like
What?
literally, I mean the experience that this past year. I mean it's been so different and so vast. I know we discussed this in our other podcast, the Wazoo experience, but it's bad. It
Yeah,
really
shout out
is.
Wazoo experience.
Shout
That,
out
that's the
Thursday,
pod. That's the Thursday pod.
Thursday pod,
This is the
boys,
Tuesday pod. That's the
boys and
Thursday
girls.
pod, and that wraps up today's pod.
Yeah,
So
that's all we have for today.
yeah, look forward to the future episodes. I think we'll have maybe one more Coug cast until the year's over, then no more until next year. So it's coming to a sharp end because of the school year. But look forward to Thursday's podcast, the Wazoo Experience. We hope to get those podcasts out, and that's about it. I think that's it. Any last words, Alec?
Nope. Just thank you for tuning into our KuCast today. I know it wasn't a whole lot. We didn't have Emiliano or Marvin on, but we had to make do and throw this one out. But I hope to help everyone good fortune. Hope to see everyone in person next semester. And that's it for today. Thank you again.
Study hard.